Greetings, this is Matt Faiello, Technical Marketing Engineer with the Cisco Cloud Networking Compute BU, and we're back with another Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series video. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest, greatest, hot off the press IMM Transition Tool, version 5.01. And with this latest version, we now have the capability of doing an in-place migration of your UCSM domain, okay, to Intersight managed mode. So that's going to be the gist of this video today. Hope you'll find it informative, and I'll try to give you a few tips along the way and give you an idea of what a migration would look like. So with that, we're going to follow with a few slides like we always do, and then end up with a demonstration. Now, we're not going to show a ton of slides. This is not supposed to be a complete soup to nuts of everything there is with the transition tool. But for those of you that have experience with the transition tool, you've certainly probably seen this slide either in one-on-one presentation demonstrations or at Cisco Live, which we've had a session with the transition tool the last 3 years. For those that are brand new to the transition tool, I would actually recommend that you go back and watch some of the legacy YouTube videos I created. There's several of them. I will post the links in the comment sections. I think it's going to be better if you start from those, okay, and then come to this. It'll make things clearer to you when you consume this material here, the demonstration, etc. This slide here basically is detailing what the transition tool is. You have the IMM transition tool in the middle. It's a VM, okay, it's freely downloaded and deployed in vCenter. And then you register your UCS manager domains. And if you have Central, you register that domain, as well as you register your Intersight account, be it SaaS, connected virtual appliance, private virtual appliance. You register all that. And then the transition tool allows you to query and do an inventory and a configuration pool from your manager and or Central, okay? And the byproduct of that is it does the conversion from XML, which is old legacy UCS, to JSON REST, which is Intersight API. It does that conversion for you. It spits out and produces a very detailed readiness report for you to review. You can do this well ahead of time. It gives you an idea if that domain is ready to move to Intersight managed mode, not only from a config and feature standpoint, but also from a hardware perspective. And then it gives you the option to go ahead and push the converted XML that's been converted to JSON REST, push that to your Intersight account. So that's been the gist of the tool up through version 4 of the tool. Very powerful, very successful. It's free, it's easy to use, and that has been really the foundation of what we're talking about to this point. Okay, so you'll see that this slide here is similar to the previous slide, and the difference being here is the in-place migration. So from a graphical standpoint, we're going to demonstrate here what it would be to go ahead and migrate a UCS domain with UCS Manager to Intersight managed mode. So the first thing we would do is after the transition of the configuration is we'll give you the option then to go ahead and perform an erase configuration on that domain, okay, and then do a fresh setup in Intersight managed mode, okay, and then once that's set up in IMM mode, then it can be claimed with the software to your Intersight account. And then it's ready for the subsequent push of the domain profile down to the domain. And that domain profile is already there. It's waiting for you because earlier in the workflow, you did a normal transition of the configuration from UCSM, okay, to Intersight. So this will make more sense as we go through the demonstration, which will follow. All right, proceeding on with the demonstration. Let's get a feel for our demo environment. First and foremost, this is the UCS Tools website, so ucstools.cloudapps.cisco.com. This is where you can download the IMM Transition Tool. Now, this version 5.0.1, notice it's a new install. Okay. And you'll see previous versions like 4.2.2, 4.2.1, you have an upgrade package here. Okay, so going from 4.2.2 or 4.x to 5.0.1, you will have to deploy a new OVA. So not a big deal because guess what? You can take a backup of your existing transition tool, deploy the new OVA, and just simply do a restore. So honestly, in a race, that technique might win out over just doing an upgrade. Okay, so no fear there. Also notice that you got your release notes down here. They're in blue and the user guide. So those are for your use at your disposal. And again, this is freely available. There's no licensing for it. This is the actual Intersight account that I have. This is my transition account. It's actually out there in Intersight SaaS. Okay, so I call this my transition account. This is what we're going to be migrating the UCS domain to. And it is completely blank right now. All right, so there's no policies, no pools, nothing. Okay, so I keep a clean slate here so I can migrate and transition the policies and migrate and show you that everything shows up here is going to be basically a result of the transition and migration. And I say both because we're actually transitioning the policy model just like we always did, except we're tacking on additional workflow steps to perform the actual hardware migration. Then here's your instance of the transition tool 5.0.1. Go ahead and log into that. And I don't have any transition yet. Okay, so we'll do that as part of the demonstration. What I have done, okay, is I've registered previously my target UCS manager domain here. Okay, so and I've also registered my Intersight transition account. So highly recommend you do that beforehand if you have not. It makes things easier. It tells you if there's any communication failures or not. You'll likely have to perhaps use a proxy. Okay, I'm within Cisco, so I don't have to. Okay, but proxy is the number one reason if you can't reach something. Okay, so check that out. And and let's pop over to my target domain. So you're going to want your domain to be in a good state of health. Okay, so solve anything critical. Make sure this guy's rock solid before you do any transitioning and migration. And I've got a single chassis, 8 blades, 8 service profiles. One of them, server 6, I'm having blade problems. I got a big time DIM failures. Not getting hands on it by the time I'm doing this video. So I'm going to be ignoring server 6 in my transition. But just to point out a few things, let's go down to your servers. You're going to want everything associated that you plan to transition and migrate. Okay, so you can see over here in the column what I desire to transition is associated. And you also want the servers to be in a power down state. Okay, so that's just preparation ahead of time. Okay. Um, you can also take a full state backup, but I will tell you that part of the migration workflow is the workflow will mandate taking a a full state backup. So we got you covered there, but if you want to take one now in preparation for it, certainly do that. And of course, that's here. Okay. Let's go back, point out another thing. Okay, password encryption key set. If your password encryption key set, password encryption key is not set, you're going to want to go ahead and do that. Is type of password, confirm it, save, and then I'll toggle from no to yes. You want that because the migration part is going to check, is going to take a full state backup, and it's going to check that you've got that password encrypted. Okay, we don't want anything in free text to be seen by folks that are that should not see. Okay, so make sure that you have this done, or else you're going to get an error during the migration part of the workflow. Okay, so with that, we have a healthy domain. Let's go back to our servers. We have a healthy domain, and let's proceed on with a transition or a migration, actually. So let's add the transition, and um, you'll notice we have a new selection here. Third one down, in place UCS domain migration. Okay, so the other two, generate a report and do the transitioning of the policy model to Intersight, those have always been there. And of course, we got really super informative tooltips here. Certainly scope those out, and you'll understand the basic flow and the different steps required. Okay. So that's always been a really good strong suit of this transition tool, and really hands off to Vincent Esposito, Garish Bat, um, and the development team that has really brought this tool a very long way since its initial inception some 3 years ago. Okay, so let's make sure we're also selecting the in-place UCS domain migration. Click Next. And you're going to see a series of storyboards. So much like the tooltips, this is a little bit more embellished, okay? And you can click through these to kind of paint the story of the transition plus migration. You can also opt to not show this again after you've seen it. Let's click Next or Start. Okay, so the first thing is add UCS, just like a normal transition that we've always had. Um, Mine automatically comes up here because I've pre-populated this in the device tab, and also by virtue of the fact that I've already um, queried, I've already taken an inventory of that UCS manager domain before. Okay, I've got cached data in the transition tool. So I could simply click next and go on and not take any time at all. Okay, if you hit the refresh button here, okay, it will be just like a first time experience. You're going to have about 7 to 10 minutes at least, okay, of time for the transition tool to go out, okay, and go through the API of that UCS manager domain, okay, and grab the configuration, the policy model configuration, and the hardware inventory of that domain and bring it back to the transition tool. Okay, so just to let you know, I'm not going to hit the refresh button here, but that's a point of time, okay, in the overall process first time you do it. And also bear in mind, if you go through this iteration and you don't like something and you decide to go back and change something in your domain, whatever changes you make on that domain, the next time you do a transition, make sure you hit this refresh button because again, you're going to have old stale data in the cache, okay, as opposed to going out to the domain, interrogating it, bringing back any changes you made, either hardware or on configuration side of things. So let's go ahead and click next. Now we're selecting our Intersight account, and of course that can be a SaaS account. It can also be a connected virtual appliance or private virtual appliance. Okay, and I'm going to pick my account, my transition account, and I'm going to click next. And here's where you have the options for all your transition settings. Okay, I will say that you have the choice here of using the your domain name here for your policies, your fabric policy names. Um, I'm going to go ahead and change that. Okay. And as far as options here, I always keep the same VLANs on both fabrics. There's never a delta for me. It's always the same exact VLANs for HA purposes, first and foremost. So I don't mind having a single policy for my VLAN policy for the fabric. Okay. But for vSANs, those can be different. Okay. Often it's odd and even, odd for like a B fabric, even for the A fabric, etc. So I definitely want different vSAN policies. Okay, and my personal preference is to create different port policies. So a dedicated port policy dash A for A fabric interconnect, port policy dash B for B fabric interconnect. Back in the early days of IMM, that was kind of necessary because you didn't want to make a port policy change and have both FIs reboot. You wanted to stay highly available. Um, that's long been past behavior. So even if you had a single port policy and you made a change that requires reboot of both the fabric interconnects, okay, maybe you did a unified ports change, okay, um, those fabric interconnects will not reboot at the same time. There'll be one after the other. Okay, so we absolutely want to maintain HA, but I still like having different port policies for A fabric and B fabric. My choice. And then we're not in a central case here, but if you were doing a central case, this is where the global service profiles conversion come in. So really, what you could do is much the same. You do a a policy configuration transition from central, okay, to Intersight, and then you come back for a second step and do the actual fabric migration. Okay, all right. These policies down here, if you, in case you have, or these options rather, in case you have multiple VIC adapters, which I do not, and also then this one here for the VIC 1300 is that special use case, special cruise ASIC. It's an older cruise ASIC, but each of the in a nutshell, each of those single adapters had two host um, host buses basically within two separate PCIe lanes. And so each physical adapter thought, virtually it was two adapters. Okay, so that's why we have an option there. Okay, I have a clean slate, so I'm not worried about overwriting objects with the same name. So let's go ahead and click next. And I didn't mention this, but before we do, the org name here. This is, you can certainly just use manual default or put a your domain name there. I'm actually not paying a whole lot of attention. Obviously, I glossed right over it because down here we have organizational mapping, which offers really advanced capabilities in step 5. So I just blow past this and leave it as default. Click next. Now we get to pick and choose if we want to transition the whole pie, the every single piece, or just a portion of the pie. So I'm just going to do dev test uh, suborg structure right now. Okay. And then I can come back with a follow-on separate transition to do prod. Okay, so that's a benefit of the transition tool and its transition policy model transition capabilities is you can actually do separate transitions. Okay, to do a piece of the pie. Let's say you have a pie, you got four different orgs, four different pieces. You can do four separate transitions if you wish, or do the whole thing. So let's click next. And here's that organizational mapping, and I've got advanced mapping capabilities. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and query my Intersight orgs because it's remembering a org that I once had populated in Intersight in my account, and it was stale data. As you can see, it disappeared. So now I'm going to add it back in, just like you would have to do on your first attempt. And I'm just going to call this IMM um, dev test. So basically the same name, it's just IMM in front of it. We do have the ability to do shared orgs and Intersight managed mode. Okay. If you don't have any experience yet with Intersight managed mode shared orgs and know how that works, I would not choose this time, okay, to do that. I would go ahead and migrate everything, keep it simple, okay, get it into Intersight, and then you have a lot of flexibility in Intersight that you did not have with legacy UCS Manager, UCS Central, okay, as far as, manipulating objects, so you can basically create a shared org model after the fact. Once you get exposed to that, learn about that, you have the desire to do that, go ahead and do it. Uh, just a word, we have white papers out there, we got videos out there on how to do that. Because UCS Manager had a nested org suborg structure, it had auto resolution. Okay, so I could have a server profile down here in dev test, but yet I could look up and grab a policy, maybe a user act maintenance policy up here in root. Okay, you had that kind of lookup and resolution that was automatically built into the architecture. Whereas Intersight Managed Mode, it's all standalone orgs. And before shared orgs, if I had 5 organizations and I needed a firmware policy, exact same firmware policy in each of those orgs, then I had to create it 5 times. And then I had to update it in 6 months 5 times. Whereas in a shared org model, I can create an adjacent org, share that org with the other 5 targets or destination orgs. I can create that maintenance policy once, or the firmware policy once in the shared org. Okay, and share that out, and then the server profiles, server profile templates, and each of the target destinations can access that one policy for reuse. Okay, so obviously it's more efficient. Okay, and again, if you have interest in doing that, go out there to the white paper and the IMM uh, expert series. We have a couple shared org videos. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I know in my situation, I've got policies that encompass all the suborg structure. So I'm going to highlight all 3. And I want that to be crunched down to a single org in Intersight to simplify. So what that looks like is if I go down here, the pull down, I can see any policies that are in root/TME demo, or root/TME demo/dev test is going to get crunched down into just IMM dev test. So let's click next. Okay, take a few moments here to generate the readiness report. And that was your first selection. If you go back to a brand new transition, you can just do a readiness report. And Okay, mine is really quick because I've got cached data from before. Whereas, this might take several minutes your first time through. Okay, so I have the ability to see anything super impactful here on an overview screen, and nothing here is anything really to be worried about. Out of band management IPs, that's actually a feature being worked on as we speak in Intersight managed mode. So that's going to come, but right now they're going to be ignored. You can actually view the report, of course, and go through it with a fine tooth comb. But here's my chances of a successful transition. That's basically what this overall summary conversion score is. Okay. So, and that's what the report does. The report gives you kind of the state of the union of that domain, both from a hardware perspective and a policy configuration perspective. And it gives you a warm fuzzy that everything's going to be good if you transition that policy to Intersight. Okay. So it's entirely possible to run this against a hardware domain that's not supported in IMM. Of course, those who have done transitions before understand you can still go out and grab the policy model, transition that, but of course you'd be standing up new hardware. Maybe it's the new X series. Okay, let's go ahead and click next. Oh, you can download that report too. Let's click next. It's saying, hey, you got some warnings here. Be aware. No problem. And this screen largely allows you to download the existing JSON. Okay, take a look at it, study it, and you could actually edit that JSON file um, with an editor, and then browse and upload that edited JSON file, and that edited file will be pushed to Intersight. Okay, so you got some additional flexibility here. If in fact you want to make some changes to that configuration that was automatically gathered by the transition tool from the domain. Let's click next. So now we're actually pushing to Intersight. You'll start seeing a flurry of activity over here. By the way, these operational logs are wonderful. I mean, it's going to tell you everything that's going on step by step. So, you know, again, kudos to the development team for making these operational logs so detailed, so thorough. Okay, so we've successfully pushed the logical policy configuration to our Intersight account. So the tool reached out, did an inventory collection, did a configuration grab, brought it back to the tool, converted from XML to JSON REST, and then with this step here, pushed it out to the Intersight account. Okay, so we're going to exit out of that. We can look at a push summary. It's very nice. Okay, nothing super important about that. No failures. A few things got skipped. Default organization's already in Intersight. Okay, and the resource group's already there for the default, which we're not really using. Okay, so we can also download that configuration. And before I go on with the workflow here, let's go over to Intersight. Let me do a refresh here. Okay, you can see we got all of our policies in here now. You can see it was just pushed. Okay, we have, let's go up to profiles. We have our server profiles all pushed. Okay, we have our all important domain profile. So it gets attached to the IMM FIs. The FI is in IMM mode. Okay, and that configures all of the ports um, and a few of the policies with the FIs and the fabric perspective. Okay, let's go down to templates. So it creates a chassis profile template for us. It, of course, creates the server profile template. And then we are using VNIC and VHBA templates, so it creates those as well. Got our pools. Okay. So with that, let's go back to our transition tool, and we're ready to proceed. Okay, so we're now at the backup step. Okay, so up to this point, it's just been a normal IMM transition tool transition. And we've always up through, 4.x, which did not include the migration capabilities, we've always made comments like it's totally non-disruptive to the domain. Okay, perfectly safe to run on a domain in production. That's all true. And if you're just doing the transition, okay, that's still true. But obviously, with this migration, in place migration, we are touching the domain, and we're going to take the domain down, do a race configuration, set it up in Intersight mode, and get it claimed up to the our Intersight account, and then subsequently have the domain profile pushed down. Okay, so that's all part of these additional steps here, and just like I said before, we're going to start off by taking a mandatory backup. Okay, so this is not something that you skip, even if you did it before. We're going to do it again. Okay, coming back, our backup is now complete. You can download that backup. Let's exit out of that, and we're going to click next. Okay, so here's several tests that are performed, okay, prior to the actual erase configuration, which is the migration part. Um, so we're checking connectivity both from a secure shell and HTTPS perspective. We're verifying the claim status, meaning that UCS managed domain should not be claimed to Intersight at the time of migration. So for all those that are doing this on a UCSM domain that's claimed to Intersight in UMM mode, UCSM managed mode, okay, you're going to want, as one of your preparatory actions, is to unclaim from Intersight. Okay, and we actually have a check here that will verify that. And then also we're going to verify if your servers are powered on. They should be powered off. Okay, and now we're going to click the erase configuration, and it's going to ask you for the admin password. So you can't do this by accident. Okay, it's got to be a willful intent. And we're going to click continue. And you can start looking at your logs here. Something else that you're going to want to do, and I've been remiss, I should have had this up, is you're going to want to be terminal service consoled into each of your FIs. Okay, you're going to want this. You're going to need to do this because you're going to want to monitor the erase configuration actions. Okay, um, and you're also going to have to do some initial IP assignment setup steps. As you can see, um, we're beginning the process of erasing the FIs. So this will happen on both FIs, A and B. So, literally from upfront, before you even begin the process, you're going to want to be terminal service into both FIs. You're going to want to go check things. You're going to absolutely need to do this to assign the IP addresses like do the initial setup on a pair of FIs. Um, Also, you need to understand when things are complete, okay, before you proceed on. Okay, so I would say this is not a this is not a nice to have. This is a necessity, okay, to be consoled into both FIs during this whole process. Okay, so with that, we will pause and come back when the activity is ready for the next step. Okay, we're back. Um, One thing I'm going to alert you to is you're going to get this pop-up that you've successfully completed the task. That just means you've accomplished the reset on the FIs. That does not mean that the FIs have completely finished the process of resetting erase config and have come back up to the console login. Okay, where the setup login where you would start defining IPs and password, etc. So do not go by this. Instead, make sure you're in terminal services on both FI at the console ports on both FIs, and make sure that you're able to see that you have a login on both FIs. Okay, so I just want to warn you about that. Don't get antsy and get that message and start going ahead with the workflow. Okay, because obviously we have to set up the FIs. Okay, so with that, I've already typed console, and really what this is if you go forward here, this will just take a minute. um, it's going to tell you basically everything that you need to do. So I don't have a DHCP server, so I'm going to do it manually, but it's telling you exactly what to type in, the initial setup of the FIs. Word of caution here. That system name. I'm going to IMM, so I really don't want UCSM in my system name, but I can change it after the fact. Do not change it here in the workflow, or else your domain profile is going to fail. Okay, it's not gonna find the domain. You're not even going to get to the point of pushing the domain profile down. So just type in everything verbatim. The beautiful thing about Intersight is you can change names after the fact. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go over to my terminal services. This is my A fabric interconnect. So I'm going to follow those instructions, set it up in Intersight mode. This is lab system, so I don't typically do strong passwords. It's my A fabric interconnect. And this is the all important system name. By the way, a future near release of the transition tool 5.02, we're going to automate this as well. Okay, so this little bit of a manual impasse that you have to do in the coming months will be automated. So I do my IP address for my A fabric interconnect, the static address. Mask. And gateway. Not really using the DNS, but go ahead and provide our lab DNS. And I'm going to save this configuration. Okay, so again, um, having terminal services, you're going to want to watch this complete, this configuration, get back to a setup prompt, or a login prompt rather, on the Fabric Interconnect A before you bounce over to Fabric Interconnect B to join the cluster. So we'll pause here and come back when this is complete. Okay, so now the setup is complete on Fabric Interconnect A. So let's bounce over to B and join the cluster. Provide the static IP for B. Okay, and we'll pause here and come back when this is complete. Okay, so now that we've completed the basic setup of the Fabric Interconnect in Intersight managed mode, we're ready to claim to Intersight. So step 11 here. You have a proxy option here. In a lot of cases, most cases, you're going to have to configure that proxy if you're going to reach out to Intersight SaaS. In my case, I don't require it. Okay, we've successfully claimed our domain to Intersight. And you can see the parameters here. Let's pop over to Intersight. Log back in. And go to our transition account. All right, so let's go ahead and go to targets, and you can see we have our domain has been claimed. It's connected. And we do have a, of course, from the prior transition earlier in the workflow, we do have our domain profile. So let's go back to the transition tool and click next. So now the transition tool will be assigning and deploying the domain profile down to the domain. And of course, for those new to IMM, the domain profile is the necessary first step because you're configuring your ports, both uplink ports, port channels, server ports to the chassis. Okay, so that's actually what causes the discovery of your entire chassis and servers to take place. So the first thing you'll absolutely do in Intersight managed mode is to craft those domain fabric policies and put them in a domain profile, and then assign and deploy that domain profile down to the FIs. The beauty of the IMM Transition Tool is it does that for you. Okay, it creates those fabric policies. It creates that domain profile. And now the tool is even facilitating claiming and assigning the domain profile and pushing it down. So this will actually take a little bit of time here. So I will pause here and come back when the deployment is complete and the inventory is complete of the servers, the discovery. Okay, we're back, and as you can see, we've successfully deployed our domain profile. And if we go to our servers, you can see that as a result of deploying the domain profile, then the chassis discovery and server discovery all ensues automatically after that. And we've successfully discovered our servers with the server profiles that have been converted, properly assigned to them. Okay, and remember we skipped number 6. So the hardware's there, but I did not migrate the, the service profile, which becomes a server profile. So with that, concludes our demonstration. I wanted to show this brief slide before we conclude for today. This is all the different steps involved with a in-place migration. I've tried to document some of the times that I experienced. The NA pretty much means that's just a selection screen as part of the workflow, so it could take you as little or as much time as you dedicate there. But this is some of the more lengthy steps of the workflow. I would say at best you could achieve maybe like 1.5 hours, like 90 minutes to migrate a domain. I would actually plan closer to 2 hours because you're going to be thinking, you're going to be checking, and so forth. So keep that in mind. Hopefully this will be kind of a guiding light for you. I also wanted to leave you some reminders / recommendations. Be sure to establish console access to each FI terminal services before you even begin the process. So keep that up at all times. Make sure you shut down your servers and your domain gracefully. Make sure also there's no major faults, okay, critical faults. So make sure you have a healthy domain. If your domain is claimed to Intersight in UCSM managed mode, UMM, make sure you unclaim that before you start the workflow. Also, for the part of the workflow where you take the backup of your UCS domain before you erase configuration, okay, it's going to check for that password encryption key on your user account. So make sure you have that enabled as yes. And then during the in-place migration workflow, when it's spitting out that property sheet for your initial setup of the FIs after you've erased config, make sure you don't make any changes at all to what's on that screen. You know, perhaps you'll reconsider the name and you want a different name. Don't change it during the workflow. Just wait until you're already in Intersight, then you can change the domain. Okay, the domain name, the system name. So hopefully you'll take these to heart, and these will prevent any kind of gotchas along the way. And that completes our demonstration of how to migrate a UCS domain to Intersight using the IMM Transition Tool version 5.01, an in-place migration. I sure hope you were able to learn a few things during this session. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I know it's one of the longer videos, but honestly, there's not a whole lot you can chop out of this and have it be detailed and informative. So thank you. Stay tuned for more Intersight Managed Mode Expert Series videos. Thank you.